is a wide receiver room that is losing players like A.D. Mitchell and Kearis Jackson, players that were really important for the Georgia Bulldog team for an array of reasons. They're gone. Is this wide receiver room going to be better? I think that they definitely can. I think this is a really deep wide receiver room that the Georgia Bulldogs have. I think that whoever ends up being the starting quarterback, and we believe that it will end up being Carson Beck, I think that he's going to have a lot of different types of weapons that are really good. It's the same situation that Stetson Bennett had, where he's got a lot of different types of weapons. He's got a lot of different types of choices, right? Carson Beck will, or Brock Vandergriff, whoever it is, but I think it'll be Carson. Whoever's in that situation is going to be getting the same exact thing. A lot of different weapons that are really good. Just the personnel is going to be a little bit different. And let's just focus on the wide receiver room. Let's not let what the tight ends are, what the running backs are, cloud what we think about the position room in general. Because I think when this discussion has been had, Darnell Washington's departure kind of gets thrown in there a little bit, right? Because how important the tight ends are to what Georgia does on offense, and it will look different without him. And so let's take away the tight ends. Let's take away the fact that Brock Bowers is still around, and whoever's the quarterback will get to throw to one of the best tight ends in college football history, right? That's what Bowers is going to be when it's all said and done, if he's not already entering that territory. So let's keep it with just the wide receiver room, just guys like Arian Smith and Marcus Jackson and Ladd McConkey, and not other weapons, and truly evaluate, can this group be better than what they were last year and the last couple of years that featured some other players like George Pickens and Jermaine Burton, right? This wide receiver room has looked a lot different over the course of 3 years. So let's break down the 2023 version. Ryan Curley from Dog Post here. Hey, real quick, make sure you're signing up for our newsletter so you can see stories like these, right? Matt DeBerry, fall practice preview, breaking down the UGA football wide receiver room. You get all sorts of content like that on the website. Make sure you're signing up for our free newsletter so every day you get a notification with all of our latest stories, and will help keep you an updated and smarter Georgia Bulldog fan. Make sure you're clicking newsletter down below. It's free to sign up, right? There's no cost to you, and it's free. That's it's free. That's all you got to say about it. Ladd McConkey is probably the leader of the wide receiver room at this point in time. And I do want to confirm off the bat what class he was in, because I know that he redshirted. I just want to make sure he was in the same class as, yes, he was. So that 2020 class, Ladd McConkey, Arian Smith, Marcus Jackson, right? Jermaine Burton was in that group, right, for wide receivers. It was a really stacked wide receiver class. And Ladd McConkey, the one that no one thought about because he was the 3-star from Northwest Georgia, grew up a Tennessee fan, grew up super close to Tennessee, and now he's this guy for Georgia that does a little bit of everything, right? He does a lot for Georgia. He is an important player for Georgia. He is in on special teams as a punt returner. It'll be interesting to see who the number one returner is for Georgia this season with Kearis Jackson out. Kearis Jackson was obviously in the rotation for Georgia's kick and punt return, so he's out of the mix. Kenny McIntosh at one point was in that rotation, so that's going to look a little bit different, and those wide receivers get used for that. But Ladd, a guy that can work in the slot, can work outside, can work on a sweep, can work in the backfield if you really needed to. Ladd McConkey turned into the most productive receiver out of that 2020 class, right? I think over 700 yards and 7 touchdowns in 2023, has 2 touchdowns in the national championship, and he ends up being an important guy. And if Carson Beck is the starting quarterback, it's a class where your quarterback and 4, at this point 3 important receivers are on the roster and out there. And Arian Smith, Marcus Jackson, and Ladd McConkey. Carson Beck obviously being the 2020 quarterback, although it could be Brock Vandergriff. We think it's Carson Beck. Arian Smith. This is a guy that we got to talk to as the media on Thursday. So this is on Friday. And he's ready. He's healthy. He seems confident. He was asked a lot about just what overcoming injuries has meant to him and his journey, and he's definitely just excited to go through a fall camp. Said he hasn't really gotten through full fall camps. Day one was yesterday, so for the health sake of Arian Smith, you got to say knock on wood there, right? Because a guy that's dealt with a lot of injuries, but he seemed excited. That's kind of the vibe I got out of him. There's just a lot of different questions. Do people overlook parts of your game because your speed? Immediate, straight face, definitely was his answer. They're definitely looking over other parts of his game. He doesn't want to be known as just a speed guy, right? If he was just a speed guy, he would be running track. He essentially said that. He loves football, and that the other parts of his game, the route running, the hands, the spacing, those things get overlooked. But a guy like Arian Smith is a guy that I think Carson Beck has chemistry with. I've been saying that since the spring, and a guy that when you put him on the field, you have to account for him. You have to account for his speed, because Arian Smith is one of the faster people in the world. He's one of the faster people in the world, and he's got Olympic track speed, and you have to keep that accounted for on the outside. Now, these guys existed in the receiver room in the past, but look, Marcus Roseman-Jackson, same deal. He existed. Your depth, like Jackson Meeks and Mekhi Muse and all of the receiver depth for Georgia, it still exists. So what's new? Dominic Lovett and Ra Thomas. So Dominic Lovett is a player that I'm excited to watch in the red and black. He's going to be wearing that number 6 that Kenny McIntosh was wearing, and I think he's a guy that they can use in a variety of ways, and I think that they will. You got to see a little bits of experiments with that at G-Day. I think that we're going to see him used in a lot of ways. I think you could definitely see Dominic Lovett in the return game as well. A very shifty guy, a smaller wide receiver, thinner than Ladd McConkey, but they both I would say similar athletes. They can do a lot of similar things, and you'd argue that Dominic Lovett is shiftier, even though Ladd McConkey is shifty, and Ladd McConkey is definitely very fast. Side note, Arian Smith was asked about which wide receivers or which players on the team in general, challenge him in that speed, and Ladd McConkey was a name that was thrown out there. So something to note there. But with Dominic Lovett, he gives you another dynamic player that does more than one thing. A guy that I think that you're going to see just all over the field. I think it's not just going to be one thing that they want out of him. With Ra Thomas, from what I've seen, he's not super high on the depth chart, but things can change. He is a transfer. I know that they were dealing with some non-football issues a while ago. I don't even remember how long ago that was at this point, back in December, January, whatever. Over 6 feet. Big wide receiver target, obviously productive in Mississippi State and a pass-happy offense. Georgia, how many big wide receivers do they really have? Marcus Roseman-Jackson, 6'2". He's their possession receiver, their sure-handed guy. Marcus Roseman-Jackson might have the best hands on the team, just from what I've seen. I think that you could definitely make that argument. And my point being is they've got the weapons. They've got all these guys. When we're talking about guys like Ra Thomas being in your third string, is that not all you need to hear to know how deep this Georgia wide receiver room really is? There's freshmen like, younger players like Anthony Evans that may get a little bit of time on the field. Jackson Meeks, a guy that gets a lot of jump balls when he gets in the game. They trust these receivers to make plays, and they've got a lot of them. Think about it this way. It's the same conversation as last year, just a different player. Who's Georgia's best receiver in 2021? Well, it's George Pickens, but he's just not on the field. Who's Georgia's best receiver in 2022? Well, we feel that it's A.D. Mitchell. He's just not on the field. Well, Georgia may not be in that situation this year and have their full weaponry. Are the weapons better? That I don't think we can answer until we watch. Is it a deeper room? I think for sure. I think even though you lose the leadership, the sure-handedness, and the clutch of players like Kearis Jackson and A.D. Mitchell, you still got a lot going on in this wide receiver room. And I do think that the Georgia Bulldogs receivers will be really good. And I think it'll be an offense that looks slightly different with a lot of the same faces and some new faces and a new quarterback throwing them the ball. But I think this group's deeper and has potential to be better. Let me know what you think. Link is down below for the newsletter. Thanks for watching.